we're focused on the built environment. We're so into the form, the shapes, the colors, the styles, the materiality, the textures, right? Like poets are focused on letters and words and sentence structure, right? And so we're focused on these, architectural or design elements. But we have to remember that a beautiful space, a beautiful building is not the end result. It's the medium. In the same way that a poet, their end result is not paper and ink. Their end result is the experience of the person reading that. So the book is just the medium for the poetry to create opportunity for a human being to have an experience that's meaningful or personal to them. And so the spaces that we design are not about space. They're about people, and so understanding that we're creating a container or a way to help shape or allow a human experience. And that's the essence of design.
You're now listening to Design Curious, a place where you, creative one, are here to learn about what it really is like to be an interior designer. And I'm your host and mentor, Rebecca Ward. If you're worried about how to succeed in a creative career, if you're ready to learn your next steps to become an interior designer, and if you want the satisfaction of doing something you love every day, you are in the right place. Grab a coffee, a notebook, and let's dig into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to episode 190 of Design Curious Podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Talor Stewart. He is a licensed architect with over 25 years of experience. His book, Conscious Home Design, has hit the #1 bestseller list in 7 countries so far. Specializing in single and multifamily homes and intentional communities, he works with clients all over the United States and select places internationally. He also offers a certification program for other designers and architects to learn the CHD method to help their clients apply the life-changing principles wherever they are. Find out more by visiting conscioushomedesign.com and by listening to today's conversation. So let's get into it with Talor. Hi, Talor. Welcome to Design Curious Podcast. It's great to have you here today.
Hi, Rebecca. Great to be here. Thanks for welcoming me onto your podcast.
Yeah, I am excited to connect with you. I think that our listeners are going to get a lot out of what you have to say and what you have to offer. So let's get started. You are a licensed architect. And so let's go into your career history. Like, how did you become an architect?
It's always been there. Even when I look back to early childhood, the way I thought and the types of games I played and everything, there was all these sort of little signposts and hints. They say you connect the dots in reverse, and as you're going through it, you may not recognize it. But when you get to a vista and you look back, you're like, oh, of course, there's now you can see what the pattern was. And so it took me a little bit of time. After high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted. And I wasn't especially academic. I was more creative thinking. And so I didn't just go into college right out of high school because it was the logical next step, like so many of my peers did. I just told myself, well, I'm just going to go and explore the world a little bit. And then if there's something that I ever want to do that would require me to go to school, then I'll go back. And so I ended up traveling around. I've been to 49 of the 50 states and all across Canada and a few countries internationally, and started my own company and was really living sort of a bohemian lifestyle, as a maker lifestyle, woodworking and carpentry and musical instruments and playing music and traveling to shows and fairs and festivals and things like that. It was very fun. But I got to the point in my early 20s, my mid 20s, where I knew that this was a passion of mine, but it wasn't going to be my whole life. I thought this could be a good cornerstone, but it can't be the entire foundation for my future. So I sold my company and then sort of went on this walkabout, this sort of soul searching thing. It lasted like 2 years. And during that time, I was going, what am I going to do with my life? But then one day the light bulb went off. Bing. Oh, of course, you're going to be an architect. And so at 25 years old, I enrolled in school and became a freshman in college and set out to get my credentials. So it was a long, hard road, I'll tell you that. But anyway, here I am, a multi-state licensed architect and a best-selling book. So
awesome.
Persistence.
Yeah. It's good to know that Sometimes people's path and journey is circuitous and it's not really a direct line to their passion career. Some people never get there. So good for you to like take that time and figure out what you want to do. So with architecture, I mean, that can be pretty broad, just like design. And so are you drawn then to residential architecture, I would think?
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote the book Conscious Home Design as really as a bridge between the design profession and the non-design community, because there's so much behind the scenes that people just don't know. I mean, people see pretty pictures or they see blueprints, but the field of knowledge that we draw upon to assemble those is broad. And the knowledge is very deep. The reasoning and the thought processes and the history behind everything that led up to arrive at that choice. And people don't understand that very well. It's very esoteric. I think it was Seth Godin said like 10,000 hour rule. Said if 10,000 hours of practice or study, or concentration in a subject to get sort of expert status. And most people are not. I mean, obviously, to put that kind of time in, you have to be pretty serious about it. It either has to be a very passionate hobby or it has to be like a choice, a career choice to go down that far. Most people are not going to do that for the design of their home. But in my experience, an educated client usually is the best kind of client. I want them to understand the ramifications of what they're choosing. When they're signing off on things, they should understand what that means. The book was a little bit of a bridge builder, a little bit of an ambassador to try to connect some of the dots. When I set out to write Conscious Home Design, I had like a 50-page Google Doc with all of my brainstorms and all my ideas and all the studies that I had linked to and everything. And I was trying to organize and make sense of this big nebula of information. And I had been staring at this thing for months and was trying to like figure out, how do I turn this into a book? And my editor said, why don't you take every single unique concept that you have and put it on a 3x5 index card and lay it out on the desk? And then see if you can arrange that in a sequence, in a logical story arc. And I said, that's a great idea, because now it takes this verbal mess and it gets it into something geometric and tactile that I can move around. It changes the way my brain has to deal with the concepts. And so I said, sure, let's do it. And I found it to be very helpful, actually. The first thing I realized when I looked at it is I said, oh my goodness, no one on earth is going to read a book that's 42 chapters long about architecture. That's too boring. It's too dense. My intended audience is not young architecture students. It's people. It's the average people. And so I said, I've got to simplify this. There was a YouTube video that was going around, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. I think it was some high school teacher who had a jar on his desk and he had some rocks and some pebbles and some sand. And he was like filling it up. And he was like, if you don't put the rocks in first, there'll be no room at the end. And the rocks are the big important things. And the less important things are the smaller stuff. It was about priorities and stuff, right? And so I looked through this thing. And I said, okay, well, what are the essential priorities that I really want everyone to know, whether they hire me or not, right? Because most people will not hire an architect in their lifetime. Most people are just going to do the best they can with the walls they have. Is there a way that I can deliver value to anyone who comes in contact with my book, with my work, not only people that are going to hire me? And so I looked for things that were, well, I didn't want to just write another style guide. There's so many talented designers out there that have a unique lens that they look through in terms of their aesthetic preference. And a lot of people they do that and then they hold it up and you see it and you either swipe left or swipe right. You like it or you don't. And that's how they get clients. I wanted something that was going to be more scientifically based, something that rooted in what we actually know helps people truly live happily ever after. I mean, aesthetic, loving your home, having a beautiful home is important. It does matter. But I wanted to know, is there something beneath the surface that is important? Because you could have the most beautiful outfit by your favorite designer, but if it's 3 sizes too big or too small, then you're not going to enjoy it as much. It won't serve you very well. So I was looking for those the fundamentals that I assume if you hire me, if someone hires an architect, any architecture designer, that they're going to get the aesthetic they want. That's a given. But let's make sure that it's functional first. And then once we know that we have flow and organization, then we can hang the ornamentation upon that framework. And that's a way to create lasting success, because you don't want someone to come and go, oh, I love it. Wow. And have that big, powerful moment on the unveiling. But after 6 months of living there, realize, oh, it doesn't flow and it doesn't work for me. And then have them regret that they went through this big, long process with all that money and all that work. And they got something that looks really nice, but doesn't actually fit. I've got phone calls from people that just spent $2 million building brand new home and said, hey, we've been living here for a few months and it doesn't flow for my family. Now they're staring down the barrel of a 6-figure renovation, just to fix it.
Yeah.
We don't want that, but unfortunately it happens frequently. So conscious home design was really about looking at the sort of the more universal things that shape human happiness.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that then. The human happiness in your home. What are some things that we can kind of design into the house to help maybe guarantee some happiness for the occupants?
So this is very intuitive, but I wanted to have data. And so I was searching about human health and happiness and excellence. And because the design profession is very focused on the physical environment. And we all know that there's a mind-body connection, but there's also a mind-body environment connection. Our environment it mirrors things back to us. It lets us know if our environment is serving or is in alignment with our hopes and dreams and goals, or if it's working at cross purposes and maybe creating friction in what we want in life. I think we all understand that it exists, but it's less understood than the mind-body connection. And so my job as a designer is to help people put their environment in service of them a little bit more. And here's the thing. I always knew I was going to write a book, even from my college days. My goal, I'm going to get out of college, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to help people. I'm going to start my own business. It wasn't about job training for me. It was always about this service, the idea that I'm going to do something. I know I have something unique to offer the marketplace. And let's just see what that looks like. And so if you'd asked 25-year-old Talor what his career trajectory looked like, it turned out differently, because I didn't actually publish conscious home design until I'd been in the industry 20 years. And so originally I thought probably 5, maybe 10, before I got a book out the door.
Yeah.
But it just took longer for me to really just condense everything that I learned. And again, going back to that analogy with the rocks, what are the big things and really understanding, here's the essentials that I need to communicate to people about that mind-body environment connection. You can't peel the skin off a snake, but sheds in its own time. So that's what happened. So anyway, while researching for the book, looking for scientific data, I came across the Harvard study of adult happiness. And it's been going on since 1938. It's the largest study of its kind. They've put thousands and thousands of individuals through this program, and it's still going on today. So here we are, 88 years later, it's still going on. So not only is it the largest, but it's also the longest of its kind. And basically, they just said, who are these people? What are their backgrounds? Do they come from opportunity and wealth? Do they come from struggle and strife and lack of resources? Where are they going? What's their outlook on life? What's their career trajectory looking like? And et cetera, et cetera. Basically a full snapshot. And then they just tracked them throughout their entire lives. And all the original subjects have passed on now after 88 years. They were all, over 18 when they started the study. So they're on to subsequent generations now. And what they've found is that throughout the ups and downs of life, the challenges that everyone faces in their own way, whether it was a career change or whether it was business success or failure, whether they had, lots of ease and opportunity and they lived in a fancy, beautiful house, or whether they lived in a modest house, some of them even without running water, they just, all these things they found, they matter, they make a difference, but not as much. They found that the single biggest factor, the biggest predictor of people's happiness, and this is crucially to understand, people's actual life expectancy, was the quality of their relationships. People actually live longer statistically when they have positive relationships, connections in their life. This is the sort of the intuitive part. It's like, we all know this. It's like, oh, of course. Yeah, I know. That's the reason I get up out of bed every morning, is to make things better for my family. I do everything for my family. I love my family. And if I have any spare time, then I'm going to be hanging out with my friends. Friends and family is what make life worth living. We all know this. But when life gets really busy, and there's challenges coming in, like everything's demanding our attention and our time. Sometimes it's hard to remember to prioritize those things. In fact, some people might even feel guilty about doing something for their family, or they're working on their connections because they feel like, oh, I should be responsible. I need to do this chore, or I need to take care of this work thing, or whatever it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that once we have the data, the math behind what we intuitively know to prove that this is true for us, we can take something which might have before, without the math, this, I want to be with my family, it might stay as a wish list item, but once we have this data behind it, it now allows us to move that over onto our must-have list. It gives us permission to prioritize. And so as a designer, as an architect, someone who's shaping the built environment, and the highest calling of architecture is to help people live happily ever after, to help people live their best life, to stretch into their possibility and their potential, reach sort of the next version of themselves, whatever that means for them.
Yeah.
When I see something that comes out that says this is the biggest study of its kind in the world, and it says that relationship quality is the number one factor of people's happiness and life expectancy, as a designer, I say, how can I intentionally create opportunities for relationship in the home? Because I specifically like the residential, I like the intimacy and the personality, the personal quality of the home. I've done commercial projects, and it's interesting. There's a lot of good work to be done in that field, but my heart is warmed by the home. And so that's where I live, that's my focus is residential.
Yes.
The relationships. How do we prioritize? How do we build for that?
Mm-hmm.
So, Rebecca, I found that relationship, it's a big word. And it's like, what does that even mean? Relationship. I mean, it's such a huge target. It's like, how do you hit it? How do you aim for it with any kind of metric or any kind of system? It's just relationships. It's too vague. It's like saying happy. Yes, I want to be happy. Okay, but what does that mean? What does happiness look like for you? What are the signs of happiness, right? Without being able to identify it and qualify it in more tangible terms, it doesn't mean anything, right? It's too hard to measure. The Harvard study was very clear that relationship was not limited to a romantic partnership. So if you happen to be single people can still live a long, happy, fulfilled life. Mm-hmm. Relationships encompassed even the very most casual relationships. Like maybe you have a routine on Saturday morning, you take a walk into town and go to this one coffee shop and you order a thing for yourself. And maybe you recognize someone's face that's behind the counter. You might not know their name. They might not know yours, but they might recognize you and say, oh, good to see you again. Hey, do you want the same thing? They might even remember yours. I mean, that relationship doesn't seem like it's very earth moving, but it contributes to the bouquet of relationships in the garden of your life. All of these little things add up and they matter. They make a difference to us, especially over time, over years, helping us feel like we're connected, like we belong, like, hey, I belong here. My life works for me, my community, I fit, kind of a thing. So I started exploring, well, okay, relationships are obviously a lot more than just marriage or significant other, romantic partnership. What does a relationship mean? And so the Greeks, it turns out they have got 7 different words for love based on how it shows up. If it's between a parent and a child, or 2 best friends, or between a person and their community, or is it between lovers and spouses? And, so eros and filial and agape and storge, et cetera, for these different flavors of love. And that's fun, but I was still scratching the surface. I want to go further. So what I found is that of all the diverse kinds of relationships that we have, somehow going to fall into one of 3 broad categories. I identify those as giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships. Examples of giving relationship. Giving relationships are those where we show up as the primary giver in an exchange. And so those are relationships that we have with people that we are teaching or mentoring or coaching. Mm-hmm. That also includes relationships that we have with children, that we may be raising or babysitting, parenting. It also extends to relationships that we would have with plants and animals, whether they're our pets or even a bird feeder outside. If you have a bird feeder hanging from your porch or from a tree, that's a giving relationship that you've initiated there. we have our reciprocal relationships like you and I are having right now, Rebecca, which is, there's an equal give and take, where two people show up from their own perspective. They're standing on their own 2 feet and they talk about stuff. And it's a different quality. For instance, if I'm with children, I have to have a role model face on, and a little bit of best behavior. But with a reciprocal relationship, you can let your hair down, a little bit, and you can just speak from the heart and be a little bit more casual and natural because there's not that dynamic that's expected or required in the circumstance. And so it's a different flavor of relationship, and it allows you to develop your personality in a different way. All relationships, they expand you because they get you out of the little bubble of you. They get you thinking about others, and so they connect you to the outside world and to others in a nice way, hopefully, if it's a positive relationship. But there's different qualities therein, right? So reciprocal relationships, those with our friends, colleagues, peers, spouses or boyfriends or girlfriends, that kind of thing. Anything where there's an equal sort of give and take and exchange. And then we also have our receiving relationships where we are the beneficiary of someone else's wisdom or care or love. So relationships with our mentors and teachers, parents, elders, ancestors, even our heroes or religious, spiritual figures are all examples of receiving relationships where we are receiving some sort of love or wisdom or care or inspiration to reach a little bit into the next version of ourselves, into our potential, into our possibility. Say, hey, how can I be the best version of me today? Those relationships remind us of that. Hey, I am loved. I'm not alone. Somebody wants the best for me. So as we go through life, we're all going to have different ratios of these different kinds of relationships. We're going to have, for instance, when you're in college, lots of receiving relationships from your professors. And any spare time you have is going to be hanging out with your buds. Lots of reciprocal relationships. Usually, there's not a lot of giving relationships going on at that stage of life, which is fine. Because soon after, most people settle down and start a family. And then they've got young kids and it's like giving 24/7, for years.
Yeah.
So the point is to find over time, over the course of your life, a healthy ratio, a healthy balance. You don't want to have just all of one or another, and everyone needs to choose that for themselves, whether they're introverts or extroverts, and what feels natural and right for them, right? But identifying these 3 categories of relationship, that we now have a distinction that we can start to do an assessment. We can look around our home. So in conscious home design, I say, well, is it possible to create intentionally, opportunities for all 3 kinds of relationship, giving relationships, receiving relationships, reciprocal relationships in the home? And what would that look like? So, I can keep on going, but I want to pause and give you a moment because I've been talking for a spell here, and I wanted to see if you have any.
No, I appreciate you breaking down those relationship types, because then as a designer coming in, you're looking for the ways. What you're starting to say is for the home to support those relationships. And it's really important for the designer and architect to be conscious that they are actually creating space for those relationships to happen, right?
Yes. Look, we're focused on the built environment. We're so into the form, the shapes, the colors, the styles, the materiality, the textures, right? Like poets are focused on letters and words and sentence structure, right? And so we're focused on these, architectural or design elements. But we have to remember that a beautiful space, a beautiful building is not the end result. It's the medium. In the same way that a poet, their end result is not paper and ink, their end result is the experience of the person reading that. So the book is just the medium for the poetry to create opportunity for a human being to have an experience that's meaningful or personal to them. And so the spaces that we design are not about space. They're about people, and so understanding that we're creating a container or a way to help shape or allow a human experience. That's the essence of design, right? To my thinking. In school, we don't do that. In school, we don't have a specific avatar client. So you just get this project and it's only about the architecture. It's just it's totally divorced from reality. It doesn't have a person. And if it does, it's some a committee. Hey, there's a board of directors for this project. And that's the thing. But it's not about the end user, and so it's purely architectonic, So school projects I found them to be highly intentional, but also unconscious, because they weren't so focused on what a person is actually, are we helping facilitate that person's goals, right?
Yeah.
So that program, what purpose does the building serve?
So your book, Conscious Home Design, then goes into these details and that we can find out more about this relationship that we're looking to design and to how to support our clients in that way.
The relationships is just one of the cornerstones of the methodology. Right? It's one big piece. We also have person's core values. We have scientific first principles, which say that people can live, a strong person, the healthiest among us, can potentially go 7 weeks without food, 7 days without water, 7 minutes without air. These are scientific first principles of just what the human body needs. And so we all say, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's obvious. But when you look at our buildings, typically air is the highest priority, second by water. But so many of our homes do not have a good quality of air or drinking water in them. And so these things, if we restructure that, these are things that are going to contribute to the longest, healthiest, happiest possible lives that we can facilitate for another person, statistically. So that's another piece of it. But then there's also, a lot of homes I find are what I call beautiful shelter. And it is, the basic program is still the same from what it was 100 years ago, which is kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, and hangout space, right? So sort of 4 activities that are going on in the home. And now recently, because of the internet technology, it has allowed us to detach. And, we now have the home office, as it's sort of a new function that's been introduced basically just this century for most people.
Yeah.
But other than that, styles have changed. Technology has changed. We can have smart thermostats and connected homes and all sorts of things that are there. But the basic 4 functions, that's still really the same. We're still designing homes the way we did 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But there's so much more. If you give me a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a hangout space, that will keep me alive. I can survive with that, but I won't necessarily thrive. There's nothing there to ensure that I'm going to be happy. Right? Abraham Maslow was a famous psychologist, came up with the hierarchy of human needs.
Yes.
And he said, hey, we're more than animals. You can give us food and shelter, but that's only going to keep us happy. If you don't have food and shelter, then attaining it, achieving food and shelter, that's going to make you very, very happy, but only for a little while. Once food and shelter are pretty much assured as a baseline, then you're like, well, okay, but I'm more than just, an animal. You can't just keep me alive in a cage, and give me and feed me, I mean, you can, but I won't be happy. Right. So we have love and belonging needs. We have creative expression needs. We have personal improvement, self-development needs. In conscious home design, I say, what would it look like if because I look at that basic program, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, hangout space, that doesn't hit all of the human needs on the hierarchy of human needs pyramid. What would it look like if, in addition to helping us have good air quality and water quality, and helping us cultivate intentional opportunities for giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships, but also make sure that we have opportunities to develop all of our needs, on the human needs. So these are a framework that we can come at the design challenge with, to sort of leave no stone unturned. And it's very powerful because when a client goes through this process, they go, how many times has an architect or designer asked their clients, what do you like to do for creative expression activities? What do you like to do for self-growth or personal development? It's very rare that a designer asks a question that's so poignant like that. And so when you do, and you create this sort of what I call the ultimate wish list, because everyone's going to come. Every client that comes to my door says, "Hey, I want a new home," they have their wish list. They know it's got to have X, Y, and Z, right? And there's also some things that they're like, "Oh, I don't want this because I had that once before and it was terrible." And so they have the things that they know they want. They have some things that they know they don't want, and there's some things they haven't thought about.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they haven't thought about it, or maybe they don't even know to think about it. They don't even know to ask these questions because they haven't been told they can. And the quality of your results, the quality of your outcomes are dependent on the quality of your initial questions. Ask good questions, you get good results. Ask bad questions, you get bad results. Yeah. And so this framework of relationships and Maslow's is about asking the right questions. And when you do this work with a client, first off, it develops a lot of trust because they're like, oh, this person actually is thinking about me, not just about design. I'm not just another job that they have to push through their production line to get income from, but they actually care about me as an individual and my family, whoever you're living with, whoever you're sharing the space with. It's not about today. They truly want me to live happily tomorrow and in the future, So it gives very warm feelings, and a lot of trust is there. But B, it sets up a yardstick which you can measure any design choice against to see if it's in keeping with the things that really matter. Because every project, you just get on Instagram or get on Pinterest and it's overload. There's so much beautiful stuff out there. How do you know how to filter it out and say yes and no? Sometimes things, it might be beautiful, but it might actually not be in keeping with what we know, because we did this work, is really going to serve you or move the needle. It's just bling. It's just a shiny object. And you don't really need that. You can spend money on it. And if you have a big budget, why not take it all? No problem. But for people that are working with a limited budget and they have to prioritize, then let's really prioritize. And that's what this allows people to do. And so it gives confidence that a homeowner can say, oh, I know why we're choosing this. And confidence, that clarity translates into speed. If they're dragging their feet and not writing a check or not signing off on a design choice and it's stretching the project out forever, it's because they don't understand fully the impact or the ramification or why they need to have one or the other. And so when you create this framework at the beginning, you empower yourself as a designer, but also your client to judiciously say yes or no to things quickly. And that keeps projects moving forward on time, and they're confident to write checks and sign off, and they know what they're getting. They're really a part of it. They're not second guessing you or micromanaging you, because you've generated the document that says this is what our goals are, and everything we're doing is tied right back into that. It's not, oh, this is my opinion, I think it's great, I think we should do it this way, and then all that. You know what I mean? You can't get anywhere with that.
It doesn't stand as well as, by just having an opinion. Then if you have like scientific data and you've been asking questions that they have investment in the seeing the end product, right? Because they're like, yeah, this is a goal of mine and this is a need that I have that I want fulfilled. So
that's right.
Yeah. So you're getting so thorough and getting them to buy into seeing the end product. So that will help expedite the process. Yeah.
Expedites, yes. For sure. Yeah. So that's the approach that I've, again, took 20 years of being in the industry before I was able, so this conscious home design represents, what Seth Godin said, 10,000 hours. So the book didn't come out until I had logged in 40,000 hours, right? So that's like mastery level, right? Concepts here. Look, I'm an architect. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. There's a lot of things that I'm not. There's a lot of disciplines and professions out there that have gone very deep in their respective fields. And so I can't say, hey, look, move into this house and you'll live forever, because I can't make medical claims and stuff. But statistically, if we give people these things, they do tend to live longer, and the math supports that. And so we can just let people know, hey, that is a factor. Rather than just, the same old program from 100 years ago that we're still building, I'm trying to, conscious home design is bringing what we've learned from these other fields, these other disciplines, these other experts. It's learning from others about the science of human excellence and the science of human happiness. But like when I worked out with my personal trainer, he told me specifically, hey, don't just do this, don't just move these weights and be thinking about something else. He said, I want your mind, 100% of your attention and your concentration on the muscle groups that we're working right now.
Yeah.
Don't do this absent-mindedly. Create that mind-body connection. And, in 6 months working with him, I do better than 3 years on my own because of that.
That focus.
And so that focus, right? That intentionality. And so this is why we consult with experts, because they shortcut our success, because they've put in the 10,000 hours or 20 or 30 or 40 or whatever, right? And so you want to have access to someone who's done that so that they can help you get there faster. Because we spend so much time in our homes, right? Like more than half of our lives are spent in our homes. And for people who work from home, they're spending 90% of their life in their house. That plays a huge factor, right? The great quote by Winston Churchill, we shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us. Our environment is going to influence us, whether we want it to or not, right? It's automatic. It has to happen. So when we're shaping environment, we just want to be intentional about it so that it shapes us in the ways we want it to shape us. So that it becomes our friend, that it becomes an asset. And so drawing on the knowledge of these other disciplines, pulling them in, that's what is bringing architecture into the 21st century. It sets the home up to be not just beautiful shelter. It sets it up to be an extremely powerful personal development engine. It suddenly becomes a personal growth tool in the sense that it's going to make you work, right? Because you still need to be able to relax and have it be your sanctuary and hang out, right? It's just that it does it like a tree root 24/7 is going to move a concrete sidewalk. Wood is softer than concrete, but that constant pressure overcomes. And so the constant pressure of your home, we just want it to push you, lift you into your goals rather than be working at odds, at cross purposes against your goals. So that's all it is.
Well, Talor, I love everything that you're saying. It really resonates with me in my philosophy and how I design for my clients. And so I definitely recommend that everyone listening should go and read your book and should also be aware that you have a certification available for designers and architects, right? So we'll put a link for that as well. So if that's something you're interested in, is it Conscious Home Design certification? Is that what the program is?
Yes. Look, I want to help the whole world, but I'm just me. I can't help everyone. And also, we're all individuals. And so conscious home design can help pretty much anyone. Once they've achieved that baseline of home, of security, then the next step is to, well, how can I, make my home serve me even better? But there are a lot of people out there that aren't going to resonate with Talor. I have my own personality and my own style. People are very diverse. Conscious home design is universal, though. So there are people that maybe don't want to hire Talor Stewart as an individual, but the principles of conscious home design could really help them and their families.
Yeah.
To be able to help the most amount of people, I can certify other designers in it so that they can work with their clients in the flavors that they like and still the design styles that they like, right? Because I have my aesthetic, that's my own style, but it's about people connect with their people, with their clients. So, I would like to see a conscious home design certified designer in every town or every city in America. Start with every state in America, but then we can go on, and even internationally too, for if you have people listening overseas, happy to help them. And so it's really about you helping your clients more deeply, more profoundly, and getting to that, like we talked about before, the confidence that you want to give your client. And so they know that buy-in, to use your word, Rebecca, was a wonderful word, client buy-in on the design choices.
Yeah.
So conscioushomdesign.com. You can get the book there. If you want to pick my brain, fill out the contact me form. If you're curious about getting certified, then send me a note and I'll let you know about it.
Perfect. We'll put all those links in the show notes so people can easily find you and connect with you. But thank you so much, Talor, for coming on and sharing your expertise. 40,000 plus hours definitely makes you an expert on this, I think. So
yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Really great to be on your show.
So like I said, you can find out more visiting his website about that process, the certification for conscious home design, which I think is really great. And once you've gone through it, then you can have that certification listed on your website and everywhere that you want to share it. And you have all this great knowledge, and also other designers and architects who have gone through the program might recognize that or want to work with you for that. I just think it's a great opportunity. So seek that out and take a look at that. And that is all I have for you this week. Don't forget to check out My Design Mentor. We've got that replay of the webinar that was so popular, and other downloads and links for you in the show notes. Okay, next week we'll have another great episode. And until then, stay creative. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode, please leave a rating and a review. This helps me reach other curious creatives like you. If you have a topic request or would like to contact me, simply head over to my website, rwarddesign.com, or email me at podcast@rwarddesign.com.